Hey, it's Ryan with this week's Mille Lacs Fishing Report. It's November 7th and water temps are about 46 degrees. Getting started with the muskie bite, I think the best route to go with muskies this week is to talk about tullibee because so much is going to revolve around the tullibee spawn. The tullibee spawn at about 42 degrees. We're at about 46 degrees right now, so we're getting very close, but we're not quite there yet. We're just a little bit warmer and a little bit behind schedule than normal, but as the broad scope of things go, I would say we're pretty close to on track. Now, what I've noticed as far as tullibee, a lot of times what you'll see is they stage in the deep water off of the reefs, and then as the water temps get close to that 42-degree mark, they move up on top of the reefs. Right now, I'm seeing kind of a spread. There's definitely a few fish up on the reefs. I would say about 10-15% of them on top of the reefs right now. They chase your baits, they bang into the side of your baits and try to spawn with your baits while you're casting. There's also a few fish that are still left out deep in that 30-foot plus range. I would say it's probably, 15-20% of the fish are out there right now too. So there's definitely fish up on top and out deep, but I would say the vast majority of them right now are somewhere in the middle. I'm seeing a lot of fish in that 12 to 18 foot range. There's a lot of tullibee in there, big schools of them stacked up. So they're right around the reefs. They're getting ready to come up and spawn. We have a full moon that's going to be taking place. I think it's either tonight or tomorrow night, but that's going to trigger more fish to go. So there's a lot of things heading in the right direction for the tullibee spawn. The next couple days is typically when the biggest muskies of the entire year are caught. So we're right there. Big things should be happening. We should hear of a couple big fish coming out of the lake, and hopefully one of those is out of my boat. But as far as tackle and techniques for catching them this time of year, it's still going to be either the trolling or the casting. The guys that are trolling, they're going to be trolling large baits, 10-inch plus baits. They're going to be trolling them fast, typically 4 miles an hour or so. But plows, headlocks, believers, jakes, that sort of thing, those are all popular baits, but they like to troll those in the larger sizes and troll them fast. Most of the trollers are going to be fishing the edges of the reefs. They'll be in that 12 to 18 foot range, but there will also be guys trolling off of the reefs in that 20 to 30 foot range also. Most of the guys that are trolling are going to be looking for bigger schools of bait fish. They'll be using their electronics, marking bait, marking the tullibee schools, and then just trolling through them throughout the course of the day. As far as casting goes, the guys that are casting out here, including my boat, that's going to be a lot of swim baits, maybe a little bit of casting crankbaits too, but for the most part it's going to be swim baits, either big paddle tail swim baits or big curl tail swim baits, one or the other. So bulldogs, water wolves, that sort of thing are popular baits out here, medusas, but a lot of guys will be casting the larger ones. Stuff that's close to that 1 pound range is definitely the most popular. There's a couple different colors that people will throw. I tend to just group it into 2 different basic color groups, either natural or bright. So typically I'm going to grab something natural, something that looks like a tullibee, something a little more drab gray, kind of maybe a bluish color. But other days what I'll do is I'll grab something very bright, such as a fire tiger. So one of those 2 colors is typically what you're going to see people casting or trolling out here. And for the most part, that's what's going to catch the fish. As far as places to cast for the muskies, I'd say for the most part, guys are going to be casting either the edges or the tops of the reefs. There is some people that will cast out deep, but in my boat, typically what I do is I spend a majority of my time around the tops of the reefs. I feel like when I go up to the top, everything is more condensed into a smaller area. It's just a lot less water that I have to cover. I'd rather hit the same cover twice as far as being on top of the reef than fishing around the edge, because I just feel like there's a lot more going in a smaller area up there. But when casting, the guys that are casting will either be going on top in that 3 to 6 foot range, or they'll be casting off the edge in that 12 to 18 foot range. As far as walleyes go, the walleye bite's been a little hit or miss out here the last week or so. I've taken some trips that have been a little bit tougher, and I've also taken some trips that have been a little bit better. What I would recommend doing is the most consistent thing I've found is pulling minnows in that 12 to 20 feet of water range. If you can find a good rock to gravel transition in 12 to 20 feet of water, especially that 15 to 20 foot range, that seems to be the most consistent. That's where I've been putting fish in the boat day in and day out. Minnows and a Lindy rig, just trolling them slow. When you find fish, pause on top of them. That seems to be the best way to put fish in the boat right now. Another way that's been catching fish for me throughout the fall has been going up shallower. We've been rigging minnows in that 6 to 12 foot range. When the fish are in there, that seems to be the best bite going. We do pretty well in that 6, 8, 10 feet of water, pulling minnows on nice sharp rock to gravel transitions. You can also drag a jig and a minnow in there doing that. It's a great way to catch fish this time of year, but that's been a little more hit or miss when I go up shallow, and it definitely seems to be better when I have a little bit of either chop on the water or overcast skies. As far as the guys fishing at night, we have a full moon coming up. That's going to create opportunity for night fishing again. Just the shallow running stick baits. I know some guys will troll in that 3 to 6 foot range, but I value my props a little bit more, so I tend to stay in the 6 to 12 foot range. But you can either cast or troll little stick baits, 4-inch stick baits. Blue and silver is a good color. Fire Tiger, if you have some cloud cover, sometimes Fire Tiger can be a little bit better. But any one of those colors is good. Fishing them at about 1.5 miles an hour when the water is as cold as it is right now. That's a great way to catch walleyes later in the fall. The other thing that you can do at night is you can also try casting, especially in that shallower water, that 3 to 6 foot range. Casting a little swim bait or casting a stick bait is another great way to catch fish after dark. Moving on to the smallmouth, I don't have a whole lot to report on the smallmouth. Water temps are down there now. It's going to be getting really tough to catch them. They kind of start shutting down when you get into the low 40s. What was working very well for me though, however, this last week was either dragging tubes very slowly on the bottom, especially if you could find fish concentrated into a smaller area. The other thing that worked really well also was casting a swim bait and reeling that slowly across the bottom too. Either one of those techniques worked great in anywhere from 15 to 20 feet of water. Typically what I was looking for is points that tapered out into the main lake that were kind of adjacent to deep water. If I could find a point that had large rock on it, I could use one of those two baits and get some very good fish going this last week to 2 weeks. Another thing that you can try is if we get days that warm up a little bit for the smallmouth, you can also use the jig and wrap or blade baits. That's not my favorite way to fish, but I know it works well, and I know there's a lot of guys that do it. So when the water's cold, jig and wraps, blade baits, fishing them a little bit deeper, that 18 foot of water is a good starting point. But that's a great way to catch late fall smallmouth. Hopefully these tips help you out, and have a great week.